In the early 1990s, a broke Wall Street clerk named Jason Ruffo borrowed about $10,000 from a New York loan shark and vanished into Europe for 3 months. His roommate Bill Perkins stayed behind to save, regretted it for 30 years, and turned that regret into Die with Zero. This video breaks that book down into its 5 best lessons. And here's the sting. Both men earned about $18,000 a year. The trip changed nothing about Ruffo's career. Both of them ended up fine, but the one who did the responsible thing is the one who never stopped wishing he'd gone. So who is Bill Perkins to lecture anyone about money? He's a Houston energy trader who reportedly generated over $1 billion in profits for one hedge fund, went on to run his own fund, and has won more than $5.4 million at high-stakes poker tables. When a man like that says the goal is to die with exactly $0, it's worth hearing him out. His case is simple. Money only becomes life when you trade it for experiences, and your ability to make that trade shrinks a little every year. Wait too long, and you're rich on paper and broke on memories. The book has 9 rules. These 5 matter most, and the last one explains why he thinks most inheritances arrive too late to help. First, the day a boss called Perkins an idiot for saving money. Lesson 1. Timing beats discipline. Picture young Bill Perkins, a screen clerk at the New York Mercantile Exchange, proud as anything because he'd scraped $1,000 in savings out of an $18,000 salary. He told his boss, a partner named Joe Farrell, expecting a pat on the back. Instead, Farrell asked if he was an idiot. "You came here to make millions," he said. "Your earning power is going to happen." It stung, but years later, Perkins admitted Farrell was doing the math he couldn't see yet. That $1,000 came out of the cheapest, healthiest, most flexible years of his life to protect a future self who would out-earn him many times over. He was mailing money from a poor young man to a rich old one. And there's real economics behind that instinct. Back in the 1950s, the economist Franco Modigliani worked out the life cycle hypothesis, the idea that people get the most from their money by smoothing spending across a lifetime. Borrow a little when you're young, save hard in your peak earning years, spend it down when you're old. That work helped to win him the Nobel Prize in 1985. Perkins isn't against saving, he's against autopilot saving, stashing the same slice of every paycheck from 22 to 65, as if a dollar bought the same life at every age. It doesn't. A hostel bunk in Prague is an adventure at 23 and a back injury at 53. So if the disciplined path quietly cost you, what's the bold move Perkins says you should make instead? He watched his roommate make it, and he hated every second. Lesson 2. Take your biggest risks while the downside is small. At the time Perkins and Ruffo were splitting an Upper West Side apartment Perkins describes as the size of a pizza oven. So when Ruffo announced the loan shark plan, Perkins told him he was crazy, that he'd get his legs broken. Ruffo went anyway. He walked the grounds of Dachau in Germany, heard stories of communist rule in the brand new Czech Republic, spent an afternoon in a Paris park with baguettes and wine, and ended up on the Greek islands. 3 months of that, and the total price was the loan and its interest. His career didn't lose a step, and his stories lasted a lifetime. Perkins finally took his own Europe trip at 30, and by his own account it was too late. Too old and too bougie for youth hostels, is how he puts it, with a regret that only grew as the years passed. Out of that came his rule on risk. When you're young, the downside of a bold move is small and recoverable, and the upside pays you back in memories for 50 years. At 25, failure is cheap and hesitation is expensive. Every birthday quietly tilts that math a little further. Now maybe this all sounds like philosophy from a rich guy on a yacht. Fair. So let's put the philosophy away and look at what actually happens to American retirement accounts, because this is where the book gets hard to argue with. Lesson 3. You are probably saving money you will never spend. Here's the number that anchors the entire book. The Employee Benefit Research Institute followed American retirees who entered retirement with $500,000 or more. 20 years in, or by the time they died, the median household had spent just 11.8% of it. So a 65-year-old who retired with $500,000 was still sitting on more than $440,000 at 85. And in that same data, 1 in 3 retirees didn't shrink their nest egg at all. They grew it while retired. That data actually predates the book. But the follow-up landed in May 2026. Tracking 30 years of the health and retirement study, the same institute found that roughly 1 in 3 retirees still held 100% of their savings, or more, by their mid-80s. One of the institute's directors put it bluntly, people are being way too conservative with their spending. Part of it is that life gets cheaper. Bureau of Labor Statistics figures in the book show annual household spending sliding from about $65,000 in the 55 to 64 bracket to $55,000 between 65 and 74 to $42,000 past 75, even with rising healthcare costs. Your body slows down before your portfolio does. And part of it is pure psychology. Retirees with a pension touch barely 4% of their savings across their first 18 years of retirement, while people without one drew down 34%. We'll happily spend a check that arrives monthly. We treat the pile itself like a shrine. Perkins looks at those numbers and asks one uncomfortable question. If the money was never going to be spent, what were all those extra years at the desk actually for? His answer comes with an actual age attached. Lesson 4. Your net worth should peak on purpose. Standard retirement advice draws your net worth as a mountain with no far side. Climb until you drop. Perkins draws a different shape and he gives it names. Your net worth should hit its peak, for most people somewhere between age 45 and 60, and then you begin what he calls decumulation, deliberately spending the pile down towards zero. He calls that stretch between 45 and 60 your real golden years, because money is only one of 3 currencies you're juggling. The other 2 are health and free time, and they never peak together. In your 20s, you're rich in time and health, and broke. Past 65, the money finally arrives just as the knees, the energy, and the people you wanted to share it with start to go. The 45 to 60 window is where all 3 overlap. So what does that look like for a normal household? First, you work out your survival number, the amount that safely covers the rest of your life. Then, say you're 52, the mortgage is nearly gone, and the number is covered. Perkins's math says the next raise stops disappearing into the portfolio and starts becoming the trip with your kids while they still want to come, or the kitchen you've put off for a decade. Decumulation, done right, just means converting surplus into life on a schedule while your body can still cash the check. Perkins isn't subtle about practicing it. For his 45th birthday, he flew family and friends from every stage of his life to the Caribbean island of St. Bart's, where he'd honeymooned, rented out an entire 22-room beachfront hotel, and hired the singer Natalie Merchant to perform. Why 45 instead of the rounder 50? Because his mother was already elderly, and he didn't want to risk her missing it. Spending on yourself is one thing, though. The harder question is the kids, and Perkins thinks almost everyone answers it wrong. It starts with a sweater. Lesson 5, give it away with warm hands. Years ago, Perkins gave his grandmother $10,000, no strings attached. She was the kind of woman who kept plastic covers on every couch to protect the upholstery, and she simply could not bring herself to spend it. That Christmas, she handed him the only thing that ever came of the money, a sweater he guesses cost about $50. She appreciated the gesture, but the money had landed decades past the age where it could still buy her a different life. And in Perkins's telling, that's the fate of almost every inheritance. Federal Reserve research shows the age when people actually receive an inheritance peaks around 60, after the house is bought, after their own kids are raised, after the career risks were taken or skipped. Wait until you die, and your children become the grandmother in this story, handed money in the exact years when it can no longer change much. Perkins has a name for that kind of giving. He calls it the 3 R's, random amounts of money, at a random time, to random people, because you don't control when you die or what's left. If those are the people you love most, randomness is a strange delivery method. His fix is deliberate timing. In the book, the optimal window to give money to your kids is between ages 26 and 35. Old enough not to torch it, young enough for it to bend a life. $50,000 at 30 can mean a down payment on a first home, a business that gets a fair shot, or a year at home with a newborn. The same $50,000 landing at 60 is a slightly larger number on a brokerage statement. And for charity, Perkins goes further. There's no such thing as giving too soon, because the need is already here, and money given today starts working today. Of course, this whole plan runs into one obvious problem. Nobody knows how long they're going to live, and the numbers on that are humbling. In Social Security's own life tables, a 65-year-old man has even odds of reaching age 84. For a woman, it's 87, and roughly 1 in 4 people who make it to 65 will live past 90. Perkins doesn't wave that away. His answer is to treat it like any other risk you can price. An annuity for the risk of outliving your money, insurance for the risk of long-term care, instead of self-insuring by hoarding a giant pile you'll never touch. If you're someone who genuinely enjoys the security more than the spending, Perkins allows for that too. The whole book is aimed at habit, not at happy savers. The sharper criticism is about Perkins himself. It's easy to preach spending when your margin for error is a hedge fund, and plenty of everyday readers have said so. That's a fair point, and worth sitting with. But then look back at the data from Lesson 3. The people in those studies were ordinary American savers. And 20 years in, most of the money was still sitting there, next to a life that never quite got lived. So the 5 lessons of Die with Zero. Save on a schedule that matches your earning curve. Take your boldest swings while the downside is small. Trust the data that says you'll underspend. Let your net worth peak on purpose. And give with warm hands, not through a will. Perkins boils the whole book down to one line. In the end, it's not what you had that matters. It's what you did. If this breakdown earned it, like the video, subscribe so the next wealth breakdown lands in your feed, and share this one with someone who's saving themselves out of a life. Then sit with this question for a second and put your answer in the comments. Which of these 5 would actually change what you do with your money this year? Skip the polite answer. The honest ones are what the next person scrolling needs to read. This is MindCraft, where ideas become action and action becomes your future.